A historic day of trade as far as the Indian financial markets is concerned comes to an end today. The Nifty hit the 10,000 mark today. With that, hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint's Market Wrap. On this historic day, joining us today are not one but two guests. In the studio, we're joined by Sharmila Joshi of sharmilajoshi.com, and online joins us Hemang Jani, Senior Vice President at Sharekhan. Thank you both of you all for taking the time out and speaking to Bloomberg Quint. Sharmila, to you first, what do you make of the market?
Honestly, as you said, 10,000, in that sense, it's a landmark event. But very honestly, if you ask me, it's been on the cards. I think ever since Nifty went to about 9,700, 9,800, it was a matter of time that you would see the 10,000 mark from here. And I think if the flows are anything to go by, it does seem to suggest that we have a long way to go even from these levels. I think the point for concern, as we've been discussing over these last many months, is the fact that the market has run ahead of valuations, and at 10,000 you're trading at about 23, 24 times forward earnings, which is not a very comforting place to be in if you're tracking markets from on a fundamental perspective. So for me, honestly, that's the only concerning bit. Otherwise, I think that given how the kind of strong liquidity flow that we've seen from domestics, it does seem to suggest that market has still more legs to go up.
Sure. Hemang, your call on the markets, and do you concur that markets have run up ahead of themselves and valuations look a little bit stretched?
I think overall it's a great sentiment booster for the investors, because when you see your wealth growing and when you see this kind of a momentous landmark being achieved so fast, it gives you a feel good. Talking about the way ahead and how valuations stack up, I think that there are certain pockets, sectors and companies where the growth momentum is very strong, and we think that because of the strong liquidity that we have and the strong macros, there is a case for justification of these kind of valuations for the market. So the question to ask is there a case for a significant correction at this point of time? Now that we are in earnings season, I would say that stock specific, you might see small corrections here and there. But if you are an investor and has a 2 to 3 year kind of a view, I don't think one should be worried about the valuations at this point of time, because in a bull market, particularly at the initial stage of the bull market, valuations do look a little expensive. But once you see the numbers coming through, you will find them quite comforting.
Sure, Hemang. Before I move on to further questions, let's address the individual gainers and losers on the Nifty. Have a look at the screen. Well, the Nifty ended just marginally in the red after hitting that 10,000 mark. In fact, for the better part of the day, once the 10,000 was taken out, it actually slipped below 9975 and consolidated near those levels. So you had the likes of Vedanta on the back of good earnings, gained more than 3.5%. So did Indiabulls Housing Finance, that reported numbers yesterday, up 3.5%, followed by Hindalco, close to 3% gain seen on that one, followed by Axis Bank, about a 2% gain over there as well. As far as the losers were concerned, we had Z Entertainment lose more than 2% on the back of earnings that were not so good. Then you had Ultratech Cement down 2%, so did Tech Mahindra lose about 2%. Those were the individual movers. But Hemang, you were mentioning about there are certain sectors or stocks that you were seeing some momentum into, and you would go out and can you give us some details of which sectors or which stocks you are looking for?
I think there are two leadership sectors in the current market scenario. One is the financials led by the private sector banks, where as we can see that the numbers have been quite good, though on the slippages side, on the asset quality side, you might say that there has been increased provisioning. But on an overall basis, we do think that the entire next leg of the move in terms of earnings would come from the financials, and that too from the private sector banks. And the second leg would be, of course, the auto companies, because both four-wheelers and two-wheelers, we think that the growth momentum could continue, and there is some degree of valuation comfort and the GST would be an additional trigger for these two sectors. So we definitely think that one should participate in these two particular sectors from an investment perspective.
Sure. Sharmila, we've kick-started the earnings season about 2 weeks back, Infosys, TCS, IndusInd Bank. Before I come to the results that were declared today, anything that has caught your eye in terms of, amazing results that have been posted?
Well, there have been a couple of good numbers, but I think they've been largely from the large cap, mid-cap sort of names. I think from the large cap names, nothing has really impressed too much. I think the private banks have sort of held their own. But at the same time, for instance, market did do a little bit of a take a step back for even for HDFC Bank when they declared some provisions. Of course, I mean you sort of caught up with the realization that they were declaring those provisions for some the loan waivers, etc., and they were providing for them in advance, which is the style of HDFC Bank. And for a bank of that size to give this kind of growth quarter on quarter is pretty impressive in itself, and we saw that in the way the stock ran up today. So there have been pockets like that, especially even as Hemang was mentioning, the private banking space has sort of held its own. But at the same time, I think let's not forget that even over there will be names like an Axis Bank, where they had already said that out of the 12 names which have been declared as defaulters, they have 8 in their books. It's another thing that they've provided for them. But there could be other names that could join that list, that watch list, which are not in the watch list, and I think that's the thing market sort of worries about with these private banking names. So I think some numbers have obviously disappointed. I thought M&M Financial didn't have a very great number. I think Asian Paints also, there was a bit of a slip up there, not as per analyst expectation, etc. So there have been numbers which have disappointed, whether it is because of GST destocking or whether a generally slow quarter. It's been an okay sort of quarter as far as I'm concerned so far.
Sure. Actually, Asian Paints was one of the questions that I had in mind. Earnings were below expected, below than expectations.
If I can just add over there, since we're talking of numbers, I would still be positive on a lot of the paint companies, because at the end of the day, as case in point of Asian Paints, they did say that there were certain segments where they saw like single-digit growth. But the fact that crude is coming off is always a positive for paint companies. And I think that if you want to play real estate as a sort of a proxy play, for me still paints, companies like a Pidilite, these will still continue to be stocks that I would continue to like and have sort of in my portfolio.
Sure. Hemang, did you have a look at the Vedanta results? EBITDA was up 40% and profit grew more than 60%. Stock was the top Nifty gainer.
Well, yes, in terms of operating performance, Vedanta numbers were extremely good. I think in terms of volume growth, in terms of the operating profit, and the fact that there has been a sizable repayment of debt to the tune of almost about 9,000 crore. I think that bodes well for a company which has gone through so much of stress in the past couple of years. And we do think that the overall volume growth for some of the domestic metal companies would be very good, and the valuations is on their side. So it makes sense to have a positive bias for metal companies at this point of time.
Sure. Sharmila, last question to you on GlaxoPharma. The results were not in line, or did not meet analyst expectations. The stock tanked about 2.5% today. The profit declined about more than 60%. What do you make of it?
So in that sense, it's a complete MNC sort of a pharma play, and there could be a couple of reasons. GST could be one reason why you saw that sort of big dip in profits. And I think even for pharma companies, this whole price war sort of that is being played out, and that pressure that you're seeing on pricing, that could have had an impact on the GSK Pharma results. Of course, I haven't really heard anything from the management. I've just seen the numbers, so this is just an assumption. So we need to hear and find out what really led to such lower profits than what was expected. But I think this could be broadly the reason. And pharma has been a little patchy because you've seen certain companies get their act together, where this whole US FDA situation, etc., is concerned, and they've sort of gone from strength to strength, and others are still sort of struggling in that space. So that's a space that needs to be watched, and it's an interesting space, I think, going ahead, especially if market continues on this kind of a run. But yes, I think, as you said, you know, I think GSK Pharma was a tad disappointing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We'll let you go on that note. Thank you to Hemang as well. Well, with that, we have come to the end of this segment of Market Wrap. But you can read all our stories by logging on to bloombergquint.com. Thanks for tuning in.